This morning, the newspapers are digesting that sentence and the protest yesterday. Let me show you some of the papers. This is La Vanguardia, which is a Barcelona-based conservative newspaper. They're heading with the headline, significant mobilization against the high sentences of the trial. And they have a photograph of that airport, Terminal 1 of El Prat Airport, which saw significant disruption. Many of the airline crews had to arrive walking, and some of them couldn't get inside. There were about 67 flights cancelled. Let me show you another one. Right-wing newspaper La Razón taking a very different view of those sentences. Their headline is 99 years of prison, 60 days until freedom. And La Razón is pointing out that because the public prosecutor lost its its application to the Supreme Court to set a minimum amount of years for those prisoners before they'll be able to be eligible for privileges, the people sentenced, the independence leaders, could find as early as next year that they could be allowed to go home for the weekend. So that's brought quite a lot of indignation from some sectors of Catalan and Spanish society. And this is El País, a best-selling newspaper, left-wing newspaper. They're playing it fairly straight. Sentences from 9 to 13 years for the main leaders of the process, as it's known, the process of trying to get independence. They have an editorial where they say that this was an impeccable trial, that this was a very fair trial, and that the sentence reflects the fact that the Spanish justice system did a very good job, and it certainly did not reflect any kind of vengeance as the Catalan nationalists have accused it of.
Syrian soldiers are back in Manbij. The regime had to abandon the area in 2012, 1 year after the war broke out. It's the Kurds who have asked Damascus to send its troops back to the country's northeast, like in Tal Tamer.
We're here to stop the Turkish invasion of Syria and to protect Syrian families from Turkish shelling.
The Kurds have faced for days Turkish shelling in the northern regions they've controlled. Attacks their Syrian Democratic Forces have been unable to quell now that U.S. troops, their old allies, are leaving the region. Meanwhile, Turkish forces and Turkish-backed rebel fighters have advanced into Kurdish-controlled territory.
We are here to free Manbij and clear out the Syrian Democratic Forces so regular citizens can return home. God willing, the Syrian people will soon all return to their country.
Ankara considers the SDF and its main component, the YPG, as a terrorist organization, an offshoot of the PKK, which has operated in Turkey for decades. Turkey launched its offensive on October 9th. Its goal is to set up a so-called safe zone on the Syrian side of the border, a demilitarized area that would go 32 kilometers deep into Syrian territory. But as Turkish forces and those backing them advance in areas which Syrian soldiers are also deploying, many fear the two sides would clash, opening a new front line in the Syrian war.
After a week of threats, some action. Leaving a meeting with Donald Trump, the U.S.'s vice president, national security advisor, and Treasury secretary said they were slapping sanctions on Turkey.
Well, the United States of America did not give a green light to Turkey to invade Syria. The president has been very clear on that point.
The move comes after Trump called the Turkish president to insist he cease the incursion. Vice President Pence will, along with NSA Chief Robert O'Brien, head to Turkey in the coming days. In the meantime, the White House has rolled out a 50% increase on steel tariffs, as well as ceasing trade deal talks. They've also frozen American assets of 3 Turkish ministers. Congressional leaders have pushed for more widespread sanctions, including banning weapons sales. And the Treasury Secretary said such sanctions may be rolled out in the future. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who had come out staunchly against Trump's withdrawal, calling it short-sighted and irresponsible, applauded the sanctions.
We're going to send a signal to Turkey that's unmistakable in the eyes of Erdogan and the world, and we're going to break his economy until he stops the bloodshed.
House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi, however, said the sanctions were too little too late in, quote, reversing the humanitarian disaster brought about by Trump's own erratic decision-making. Despite strong pushback at home and from the international community, Donald Trump said he's going ahead with a withdrawal of all 1,000 U.S. troops in northern Syria, potentially making way for a further incursion by Ankara.